Well, good afternoon, everybody. First, I'd like to thank Samantha for inviting me to be with you this afternoon and for giving me an opportunity to share something that's very dear to my heart. I know your organization is devoted to preserving Texas's cultural heritage. So today, I want to talk to you about Wesley Clark Dodson, my great-grandfather, someone who is engaged in creating Texas's cultural heritage. I expect that you are primarily interested in learning about Wesley's architectural legacy in Texas, and I will talk about that. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the man. I am fortunate that Wesley wrote a 13-page memoir about his life when he was 85. I'm also fortunate that his daughter saved a collection of his letters so that I have his words and know what he thought about a variety of issues, including what drove him to design and build public buildings. Wesley was born in Alabama in 1829, the son of a Methodist circuit-riding minister. His father spent his time trying to bring civilization to the wilderness as the frontier line moved west. His father was assigned to a new circuit every 2 years, and Wesley grew up on farms in Middle Tennessee. I want to tell you 2 stories of his growing up. While his father was away riding his circuit, his mother would occasionally take the children and spend the day at a neighboring farm, visiting while the women did handwork. One day, Wesley was playing with Tommy McGrory in the McGrory's horse corral. Wesley slithered under a horse trough on his back. Tommy followed him, but the trough shifted suddenly and fell on him, crushing his chest and killing him instantly. Wesley was convinced God had saved him because he had a use for him. He did not know what that use was, but he vowed as a young man, and I quote him, "to never be driven from my highest design, that of making myself useful to my family, my friends, and my country." The other story I want to tell you is that Wesley's father, Elijah Jefferson Dodson, was often visited by local and state religious and political leaders who wanted the minister's advice, since the circuit rider was current with what was happening in his territory. When these leaders came to visit, Wesley would stand in the doorway and listen to the conversation. Later, he would ask his father to explain anything he hadn't fully understood. From these conversations, he developed a lively interest in civic affairs and would be actively involved his entire life as an alderman in Alabama when he was in his 20s, and as a lifelong elder in his Presbyterian church, attending the sessions, the Synod, and the General Assembly. Wesley had just established a thriving architectural practice in Livingston, Alabama, when the Civil War upended his life. He emerged from the war crippled, but determined to begin again in Texas. My dad told me that his grandfather dragged his leg like Chester in the TV series Gunsmoke, if you're old enough to remember that. When Wesley arrived in Texas, he and his wife, Sarah, who was a college-educated English teacher, looked around for a place with a good society where they could raise their children properly. That required an area where homes were not regularly broken into at night, where drunkards, prostitutes, and gamblers were not everywhere on the streets, as they were in Bryan at that time, where children obeyed their parents, and where parents obeyed the law. They couldn't find any such place. At the time, during Reconstruction, there was widespread lawlessness, depressed economic conditions, and as Sarah would say, not a particle of culture. The social structure had simply broken down. Wesley later recalled, and I quote, "He could not find a public building worthy of the name, nor a dwelling with convenience or construction which would meet the requirements for which it was erected. To illustrate the need, I want to tell you one more story. Wesley, Sarah, and their 2 children were living in a boarding house in Bryan. He left them there as Sarah was teaching a class of unruly children and went to Galveston, where he had found some work building houses and stores. There was a sleet storm in Bryan. The boarding house where they were staying was so poorly made, with cracks between the boards, that the sleet came through the cracks and covered Sarah's bed and the entire floor with over an inch of sleet. Sarah caught pneumonia and died. Wesley had lost his darling, precious wife. I think Wesley continued to look for that good society that Sarah wanted, and not finding it, worked to help build it. Before the Civil War, Wesley was considered a master carpenter or a master builder. He had studied under a New England-trained architect for 4 years. Typically, at that time, a carpenter built his buildings from available pattern books like Benjamin Asher's. A master carpenter, in contrast, built the building he had designed. After coming to Texas, Wesley continued to work as a master builder for a while, but then transitioned to becoming a professional architect, confining his efforts to designing the building and then supervising its construction. Dodson assumed a key role in the professionalization of architecture in Texas. He was a founding member of the Texas Association of Architects in 1886. As head of the executive committee for the first 2 years, he helped draw up standard contracts, establish standard fees for service, and develop a code of ethics for architects to operate under. As a 2-term president of the association, he pushed for state licensure of architects and for the establishment of a state-supported school of architecture. He became a member of the prestigious American Institute of Architects. In 1876, Wesley got a commission to build the 5th Street Methodist Church in Waco. When he went there, Waco looked much like Bryan, with dirt streets and board buildings. The 5th Street Methodist Church, his first known public building, was a brick Gothic revival building with a soaring 130-foot steeple. The McLennan County Commissioners were so impressed with the building that even though they already had drawings for a newly planned courthouse, they asked Dodson to offer a new design for the courthouse. He designed the McLennan County Courthouse in the Second Empire style, with simple mansard roofs, a tower, and iron cresting topping all of the roof lines. This was the first courthouse of his career. Between 1876 and 1881, Dodson was busy designing homes and stores in Waco. But in 1881, the legislature passed a law allowing counties to issue bonds to finance the building of the courthouses, a measure that opened the way for a surge in new courthouse construction. A few years later, the legislature made jails eligible for financing through bonds, and jail construction also soared. These 2 laws greatly shaped the direction of Dodson's career. This map shows the location of the courthouses and jails Dodson designed and supervised over the next 20 years. He built courthouses in 18 counties. One he built twice. He designed 5 jails and supervised the construction of a 6th. He also designed 3 churches and supervised the construction of 2 more, and designed 5 schools and the Widows and Orphans Home in Corsicana. But in the interest of time, I'm going to concentrate on his 11 buildings that are still standing today. While Dodson was in Palestine, supervising construction of the Anderson County Courthouse, he was asked to design a new building for the First Presbyterian Church. The building is still standing today, over 140 years after its dedication. It's the oldest church still serving a congregation in Palestine. It's hailed for being a premier example of late 19th century Gothic revival ecclesiastical architecture. As I mentioned, Dodson designed 5 jails in Hunt, Van Zandt, Williamson, Hill, and McLennan counties, and supervised the construction of a 6th in Coryell. Dodson designed the Williamson County Jail in 1888 in a style evocative of the French Bastille, with 18-inch thick rusticated stone walls, contrasting corner coins, and a crenellated roofline. The building was used as a jail for 101 years until 1989, and it's still standing today. The Hill County Jail was designed with a T-shaped floor plan. The 2-story building contained 12 secure jails in the stem of the T, which you can't see, and a large jailer's residence in the crossbar of the T. The jail housed prisoners until 1983. After it was vacated, the Hill County Historical Commission obtained the structurally sound building to serve as the Hill County Cell Block Museum. The only Dodson-designed school still standing is Old Main at what is now Texas Woman's University in Denton. In 1901, the Texas State Legislature passed an initiative providing for a school for women. Dodson's design, chosen over 9 others, was for a core building with space for classrooms, laboratories, a library, auditorium, and administrative offices. It also included wings on both the east and west sides of the central portion that could be built as the space was needed and money available. Here is the core portion, built in 1902. The Industrial Institute and College changed names several times over the years, becoming the Girls Industrial College in 1903, and eventually Texas Woman's University in 1957. In 1916, in order to accommodate a growing enrollment, the college added wings to the east and west sides of Old Main, thus bringing Dodson's full original plans to completion. As one dean said, Old Main, the original and for many years the only building on campus, was central to the life of the university. Now, let's look at Dodson's courthouses. 10 of Dodson's courthouses are no longer standing. They were in McLennan, Camp, and Johnson counties, in Hunt County, which he built twice, in Wichita, Young, Brown, Anderson, and Kaufman counties. Some burned, some were allowed to fall into disrepair and were demolished. The 7 courthouses I'm going to discuss were preserved and are still standing. The Hill County Courthouse was Dodson's most ornate Second Empire building and incorporated classical revival influences. Unfortunately, the courthouse burned on January 1st, 1993. The fire started in the tower and soon burned out of control. By the time the fire companies finally extinguished the blaze, the interior was completely gutted. Only the exterior masonry walls of the 100-year-old structure remained. Now, the citizens of Hill County were proud of their courthouse and opposed any plan to construct a new modern building. They chose instead to rebuild their historic courthouse. It took several years and $8 million to restore the building. Local fundraising, insurance payments, and 2 concerts by Hill County native Willie Nelson helped pay for the building. When the county sought and secured grants from the Texas Department of Transportation to help with restoration, it sparked a movement to save other endangered courthouses. 2 months after George Bush spoke at the rededication of the Hill County Courthouse, he signed legislation establishing the Texas Historic Courthouse Preservation Program. The program was designed to help counties preserve their historic buildings. In 1883, Dodson designed a Second Empire courthouse for Lampasas County. By 2000, the 118-year-old building was in need of major repairs. In that year, Lampasas County officials received a partial matching grant from the Texas Historical Commission that helped fund the restoration of the building. At the festive rededication ceremony celebrating the courthouse's restoration, one local volunteer reflected on her work on the project. Other than raising my family, that was the most important exercise of my entire life. Dodson introduced a new roof line for the Parker County Courthouse, placing large, convex, curved mansard roofs over the inn pavilions. In the 1990s and in 2002, the county commissioner secured several grants and restored the building. The Hood County Courthouse was Dodson's last courthouse to feature mansard roofs, which he placed over the corner pavilions, very much like he had in Lampasas. In 1968, a tornado damaged the Hood County Courthouse tower, leaving it tilting and in imminent danger of falling. The county commissioners planned to raise the tower and install a flat roof, but other more preservation-minded leaders argued to keep the clock tower and the building's original architecture. The Granbury Women's Wednesday Club petitioned the commissioners to save the tower. Dismantling the tower, they argued, would destroy an important link with the past that could never be replaced. The commissioners accepted the arguments of the preservationists and contracted to have the damaged structure restored to its original condition. The courthouse restoration provided the economic stimulus needed to revitalize all of Granbury's town square. Tourism became vitally important to the local economy as visitors came to see the historic courthouse, visit the museum located in the old jail, and browse in the restored shops and restaurants. In 1974, the Hood County Courthouse and the surrounding town square became the Hood County Courthouse Historic District. It was the first town square in Texas to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. In 2001, Hood County secured a planning grant from the Texas Historical Commission, and in 2008, a construction grant. With those funds, the commissioners undertook the total restoration of the courthouse. When the building, widely considered the county's crown jewel, was rededicated in 2012, a local official noted the importance of a historic Second Empire building to the people of Granbury. She said, "The Hood County Courthouse is the heart and soul of our community. The courthouse gives Granbury its special sense of place and unique charm. Our courthouse reflects the past, significantly contributes to the present, and now heralds a shining future for Hood County." Now, the floor plan that Dodson used in all of his courthouses, with the exception of the small Camp County Courthouse, was cross-axial, with entrances of equal prominence on all 4 sides. On the first floor, Dodson placed the offices that drew the most people into the courthouse on a daily basis to conduct business. The large district courtroom was centered on the second floor with high ceilings to accommodate balcony seating. Paying attention to a smoothly functioning courthouse, Dodson placed the judge's chambers, the district attorney's office, the jury rooms, witness room, and district clerk's office in places with convenient access to the courtroom. Now, in 1888, when designing the Fannin County Courthouse, Dodson made an important improvement in courthouse design. His plan featured a 7-bay composition, not the 3 or 5-bay plans that he had been using. And the additional space gave him the room needed to locate the second-floor courtroom to the side of the central corridor, rather than in the center of the building. In turn, this enabled him to support the centrally located tower from the ground up, discarding the wooden trusses previously used. Dodson's new technique proved to be indispensable in supporting the heavy masonry central towers in his later courthouses. Another innovation in the Fannin County Courthouse design was the use of what I think is pronounced bodark trees to stabilize the foundation. The technique had been developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, but had never before been used in Texas. Because the ground was unstable, Dodson built the Fannin County Courthouse upon a foundation of 922 bodark trees. The trees, the majority of which were 12 inches in diameter at the butts and 14 feet long, were driven into the ground. Concrete footings were then placed over this foundation. On New Year's Eve, 1929, a fire started in the courthouse's Italianate cupola and soon engulfed the tower. As the Bonham Daily Favorite reported, the tower is gone and the bell is in the basement, and the clock, a total wreck, lies by its side. The fire also destroyed the building's elaborate gable roof. In the midst of the Great Depression, the county commissioners could afford to do little more than secure the building by installing an undistinguished flat roof. In 1964, the courthouse commissioners approved a major modernization of the courthouse. New aluminum doors and windows were installed, and the exterior stone was covered with a smooth surface of Luter's limestone, transforming the courthouse. One critic of this modernization noted, all the original hand-dressed stone and architectural details were covered to reduce a squat, boxy building with no distinguishing architectural features. In 2008, local librarian Barbara McCutcheon began campaigning to restore the courthouse to its original grandeur. Voters approved a bond issue, and the Texas Historic Courthouse Preservation Program provided a grant. Once the cladding was off, the aluminum windows and doors were removed. When additional money was needed, the county secured $10 million through certificates of obligation to finish the work. The finished project cost almost $30 million in a county of roughly 30,000 people. This represents a remarkable commitment to preserving their local history. At the courthouse's rededication ceremony in 2022, County Auditor Alicia Whipple reflected, "This beautiful lady will always have a piece of our hearts." The design of the Denton County Courthouse was clearly a departure for Dodson. All of his courthouses had been Second Empire, with classical revival and Italianate influence. He was awarded the commission to the Denton County Courthouse only because the divided commissioners court had rescinded his contract with J. Riley Gordon. They gave Dodson the contract, but still asked for a Romanesque revival building. Dodson probably would have preferred designing in what he saw as the cleaner, more elegant lines of the classical revival architecture. He may have agreed with his fellow architect, James Warrenberger, who said in an address to the Texas State Architectural Association that it was absurd that public buildings like courthouses should be of such antiquated architectural style as to remind us of the dark days of the Inquisition. Whoops. This is the Denton County blueprint, and it shows even more clearly how Dodson moved the courtroom to the side and made the central core available for the ground-supported masonry tower right here. In the 1980s, Denton County began major restoration work done in 3 phases over a number of years and helped by a grant from the Texas Historical Commission. The building was rededicated in 2004. In 1897, the Coryell County Commissioners called for a building in the latest style. In response, Dodson designed a courthouse in the Beaux-Arts style, a style that had been taught at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. This style combined the classic forms of ancient Greek and Roman architecture with elements of the Italian Renaissance and French and Italian Baroque periods. Beaux-Arts would soon become the dominant architectural style of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. On top of the courthouse, Dodson placed a dome with an open belfry housing an 800-pound bell. Over the rotunda was a beautiful blue and gold stained glass dome. Coryell was the first Texas County courthouse to have a dome as its crowning feature. In the 20th century, buildings with a dome and rotunda would become increasingly common as these features became symbols of democratic government itself. Dodson also adorned the roof of the building with statues of liberty and justice and placed an eagle on the top of the dome, a feature that became a shooting target for drunken cowboys for years. In November 1986, the Coryell County Commissioners authorized the complete restoration of the courthouse. In September 1988, on the 90th anniversary of the building, Coryell County held a rededication ceremony. In July 2023, on the building's 125th anniversary, it held another celebration. As you can see in this chart, all 7 of Dodson's still standing courthouses, as well as his other 4 public buildings, are all recorded Texas historic landmarks. All but 2 of these 11 buildings are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. It's a testament to the importance of his work. Now, before I conclude and take your questions, I'd like to say how indebted I am to people like Barbara McCutcheon and Alice Whipple of Fannin County, the Wednesday Ladies Group in Granbury, the citizens of Hill County who voted to restore their burned out courthouse, and all the people who have realized that preserving Texas's heritage is important. Those people have supported historic preservation with their tax dollars. They've helped preserve the legacy of Wesley Clark Dodson. Dodson's imposing courthouses, standing in prominent central locations, were focal points of 19th century community life in Texas. And they serve as reminders of the ideals and values of the people who built them. The courthouses continue to serve as centers of their 21st century communities and have been key to the economic revitalization of many historic downtown squares. These courthouses stand as W.C. Dodson's legacy today. Now, if anyone would be interested in learning more about the architecture of W.C. Dodson, the book will be released in February. The Texas A&M Press is offering a 30% discount on all pre-orders. Samantha has the flyer and could email it to you if she's not already done so. So with that, I will quit and ask if anyone has a question I might answer or a comment about anything that I have said.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Helen. It's clear that you've put a lot of time and energy toward this research. So if anyone has any questions, let's see, there's a couple in the Q&A. Okay, first question. Is there a trail or a list of Dodson's buildings?
Is there a trail? Uh, no, there is no list of Dodson's buildings anywhere. In fact, in the process of researching the book, I stumbled onto three or four that aren't listed anywhere. And the Widows and Orphans Home was a complete surprise. Uh, and a minister in Oklahoma sent me an email asking if I knew anything about it. And of course I didn't, but he was busy building a model of it and informed me of Dodson's role in building it. So my book will be the first list that I know that'll have all of it. This is the first place that has all of his buildings in one place.
Amazing. Okay, next question is, did W.C. Dodson have a favorite architectural style?
Oh, I think he clearly liked the Second Empire and the classical clean look, um, which he embellished occasionally with the Italianate. But I think he thought that Romanesque was. I think he agreed with Warrenberger that the Romanesque looked like the Inquisition and was not suitable for courthouses.
Do any of his houses survive?
There is one house in Waco, on Ethel Street. When he moved to Waco in 1876, he had a practice of buying a few lots, building houses, maybe moving his family into one, and then selling the others. And then later on, he would buy a few lots, build houses, move his family into one of them, and sell the others. And he continued this pattern so that he moved his family 7 times in the 30 years that they were there, um, building a number of homes. Unfortunately, we have no listing of the homes. I have searched through the tax rolls. I have searched through looking for transfers of property, but the newspaper in his obituary said he built a number of important buildings in Waco, but they remain unknown.
And what was the style of the Waco house that's still standing? Was it Second Empire as well?
No, it is a Queen Anne because I think it was built in about, well, the early 1900s, 1907, something like that. Um,
Did you have any experience with historic architecture before you started this research?
No, I did not, and it was a learning experience. And I give great thanks to some of these architecture books that I have gone through. Um, of course, right now I'm blanking on the name of the important one. Isn't that awful? Excuse me a minute. I'm gonna get it. Willard Robinson. Willard Robinson is an important a Texas architectural historian. Um, and then there are a number, I think over the process of doing the research, I found at least 15 books dealing with Texas courthouses. And I bought them all to see what they might offer in the way of a tidbit of information about Dodson.
Yes,
The people really seem to love their courthouses.
that's
Um,
true. Um, can you talk a little bit about how you decided to write a book and any challenges that you faced in that process?
Well, as you mentioned at the start, I had been doing genealogy and was basically focused on filling in the names on the tree branches as I went back. And then it was just by accident that I came across a book by Robert Borden, published by the Brazos Historical Society. Um, and his book contained a whole chapter dealing with early settlers of Bryan. And those early settlers were my great grandfather and his wife. So he had letters between them while Wesley was in Galveston working and she was in Bryan teaching. Um, and so he put us on to the Texas collection where we found a stash of his papers and letters. Um, and then I started writing, and again, originally it was for my family. I wanted them to know about their great grandfather. But as I got into it, I found that he was an important architect and that he had made improvements both technologically and stylistically, and that it was something that deserved a wider audience. And so at that point, I contacted Texas A&M Press, and they agreed to publish it. Um, so at that point, I began going through the minutes of the commissioner courts in all of the 20 counties to see what the process of building the courthouses had been. And I went through newspapers to see surrounding information about what was going on at the time in those cities, in those counties. And then I found the county courthouse, the county histories of the history of Hill County, history of Hood County, helpful in providing context. And it's funny, as I would contact somebody looking for an answer to a question, very often they put me in another direction that opened up new questions and sent me in new directions. So it was kind of a rabbit hole of going here and there and finding new information. Looking at the Waco, somebody put me onto the Waco city directories, where I found out that he had moved these 7 times, and his children moving in and out of the house as they grew up. Somebody put me on to the Portal of Texas History, which had the minutes of the Presbyterian Church in Waco, where he was an elder his entire life, and the Methodist Church, which he had built. And of course, the Portal of Texas History has a number of illustrations, which they graciously gave me to include in the book. So I have a number of pictures of courthouses that I think they're remarkable.
Yeah.
The more I got into it, the more I fell in love with everything.
Yes. How long has this process been? When did you start?
I had been doing the genealogical research for about 20 years. And then just before COVID, I had found this material on Wesley. So when COVID hit, I thought it's the perfect opportunity. I don't have things to do. I have this block of time. I'll sit down and write it up now. And I did. And then unfortunately, it's been at Texas A&M Press for a long time, either a shortage of editors or other snags have held it up a little bit, but that's all right, because with the additional time that I had, I found additional things and they allowed me to put them in. So it all worked out all right. But I will be glad to hold the book in my hand when it finally comes in February.
In a process.
Mm.
Do you own any archival materials like original drawings or anything like that from Wesley Clark Dodson?
The only original things I own, I have a handwritten copy of his 13-page memoirs. What happened to his architectural drawings, I don't know. The only reason we have the letters between Wesley and his wife, which is the bulk of what's at the Texas collection, is because his daughter, his wife saved them, and then his daughter saved them, and another granddaughter typed them up to preserve them so that people wouldn't keep reading the fragile letters. I own an 1840 letter from his mother when his father died at a very early age when Wesley was only 14, and they had to move from this lovely rural setting in Tennessee to Alabama, which was slave territory, and he was just it was a new world for him to move into an area where people held so many slaves on those plantations. Um, and he found the attitude of the slaveholders towards middle class people, like his brother-in-laws who were a wheel maker, a wagon maker, a carpenter. Um, they were looked down on because they were doing the kind of work that slaves could do. Um, um, so he had an interesting upbringing, moving from the self-sufficient farm life of Tennessee to the slave territory, the Black Belt of Alabama.